No one wanted to take care of the paralyzed billionaire, until a poor delivery man appeared. Hello everyone, welcome to our story. Before we continue, please don't forget to like this video and subscribe to our channel. Also, tell us in the comments where you are watching from. Are you in New York? Jamaica? Maybe South Africa or Canada? We'd love to hear from you. When the job offered double pay to care for a difficult patient, 30 people showed up at the tall iron gate on Emerald Hill. One by one, every single one of them ran away. Some lasted an hour. Some lasted a full day. A few brave ones made it to the second morning before they packed their bags and never came back. The woman inside that beautiful mansion had a tongue sharper than any knife, and she knew exactly how to use it. It was on a Tuesday afternoon, the same afternoon the 12th caregiver stormed out of the front door, that Jacob Miller pulled his old delivery van up to the gate. He wasn't there for a job. He was just there to drop off a lunch order. Someone inside had ordered jollof rice and grilled chicken from a restaurant across town, and Swift Run Delivery had sent Jacob to bring it. He parked, grabbed the brown paper bag from the passenger seat and walked toward the gate. That's when he saw the man coming out, a big, broad-shouldered fellow in a white caregiver uniform, walking fast, shaking his head from side to side like he had just seen something he could never unsee. Jacob stepped aside to let him pass. The man didn't even look at him. He walked straight to the security guard at the gate post and said loudly and clearly, "That's 12 people this week." Well, nobody in this entire city can work with that woman. I don't care how much they're paying, it's not worth it. The security guard, a thin older man who looked like he had heard this many times before, just nodded slowly and pressed a button to let the caregiver out. Jacob stood there with the paper bag in his hand. 12 people, he thought. In 1 week. He pressed the intercom button and waited. The woman who came to the gate was around 60 years old, with tired eyes and a kind face. She opened the small side gate and took the food bag from Jacob's hands. "Thank you," she said quietly, already turning to go back in. "Excuse me, ma'am," Jacob said. She stopped and looked at him. That man who just walked out, was he here for a job? The woman let out a long breath, the kind that carries a whole week of exhaustion inside it. "Yes," she said. "He was the 12th caregiver to leave this week. And the 23rd this month." Jacob blinked. 23rd. She nodded. "I'm Helen. I've been the housekeeper here for 16 years. And I'm telling you, young man, I have never seen anything like this in my life. Not even close." "What does the patient need?" Jacob asked. Helen looked at him for a moment, studying his face, his simple clothes, his old van parked by the roadside. "Everything," she said finally. "Miss Adams can't use her legs at all since the accident. She needs help with eating, bathing, getting dressed, taking her medicine. Her arms are weak on some days. She needs someone around her almost all the time. And she's difficult?" Helen gave a short, sad laugh. "Difficult is not the word, son," she screams. "She says the most hurtful things you can imagine. She throws things. She accuses people of staring at her. She fires people in the middle of helping her. She is..." Helen paused and looked toward the house. When she turned back, her voice was softer. She was not always like this. Before the accident, she was demanding, yes. But she was fair. She was strong. She was someone you respected. Now. She shook her head. The accident changed her. Losing her fiancé in that crash changed her. She came back from the hospital a different person. Jacob was quiet for a moment. "What's the pay?" he asked. Helen told him. Jacob did the math in his head in about 3 seconds flat. It was more than 3 months of delivery earnings. For 1 month of work. He thanked Helen, walked back to his van and drove away. But he couldn't stop thinking. That night, Jacob sat at the small kitchen table in his apartment in Kingsway with his mother, Margaret Miller. She was 65 years old, with gray hair and kind eyes, and she had been managing diabetes for the past 8 years. Most days she was fine. But lately fine had stopped being enough. Jacob opened the envelope from the pharmacy that had been sitting on the table since morning. He already knew what was inside. He had been putting off reading it all day. The price of his mother's insulin had gone up again. The new monthly cost stared back at him from the page like a problem that had no solution. He put the letter face down on the table. "Jacob." His mother's voice was gentle. "I saw that letter." "Mom? How bad is it?" He was quiet. She reached across the table and put her hand over his. Her fingers were warm. "Tell me." Jacob looked at his hands. He was 35 years old and had been working since he was 19. First at a factory, then driving delivery trucks, then on a motorcycle, and now in this old van that needed new brakes every 3 months. He had never once complained to his mother about how hard things were. He didn't see the point in it. But tonight the numbers were just too big to hide. The insulin went up again, he said. And Emma's next semester fees are due in 6 weeks. And the van, if the brakes give out, I lose the job. I can't do all 3 at the same time, Mom. Not with what I'm making. His younger sister Emma, 20 years old, studying business administration at the Polytechnic on the other side of the city, poked her head out from the living room where she had been doing homework on the small fold-up table they kept there. She had heard. He could tell from her face. Jake, Emma said quietly, I can take a semester off. I can. No, Jacob said firmly. You're not taking a semester off. But, Emma. He looked at her steadily. You're not taking time off. That's not happening. Emma looked at him for a moment, then went back to her books without another word. She knew that tone. When Jacob said something in that voice, it was decided. His mother squeezed his hand. God will open a door, Jacob. He always does. Jacob nodded and smiled at her. The small, quiet smile he used when he didn't want her to see that he was worried. That night, lying on his mattress in the dark, he stared at the ceiling and thought about a glass mansion on a hill and a woman who had sent away 23 caregivers in 1 month. And about double pay. He thought about it for a very long time. The next morning, before sunrise, Jacob got up, splashed cold water on his face, put on his cleanest shirt and drove back to Emerald Hill. Helen recognized him the moment she saw him at the gate. Her eyebrows went up so high they nearly disappeared into her hairline. The delivery driver from yesterday? She said. What are you doing here at 6 in the morning? I'd like to apply for the caregiver position, Jacob said. Helen stared at him. Then she stared at him some more. Son, she said slowly, did you hear anything I told you yesterday? Yes, ma'am. Every word. 12 people. This week alone. I know. Trained nurses. People with certificates and years of experience. They didn't last. I know that too. Helen put her hands on her hips and looked at him the way a grandmother looks at a child who has just said something both foolish and brave at the same time. You have no medical training. I've been caring for my diabetic mother for 4 years, Jacob said. I manage her insulin schedule, her meals, her doctor visits. I know how to be patient. I don't give up easily. Helen was quiet for a long moment. She looked at him, really looked at him. His clothes were simple and a little worn at the edges. His van behind him was old and had a small dent on the passenger side. But his eyes were steady. Calm. Like a man who had already considered every reason to walk away and decided to stay anyway. She let out a breath. Wait here, she said. She walked back through the wide front door of the mansion. Her footsteps echoed on the marble floor as she climbed the staircase to the 2nd floor and knocked on the heavy wooden door at the end of the hall. Miss Adams, she called softly. There's a young man at the gate. He's asking about the caregiver position. Pause. Then a voice, cool and sharp as glass, came through the door. Another one? Fine. Send him up. Let's see how long this one takes to run. Helen came back downstairs, opened the gate and let Jacob through. As they walked up the long driveway together, she leaned close and whispered, I want you to know that I'm rooting for you. But please, be very careful with what you say in there. She looks for reasons to attack. Don't give her any. Jacob nodded. The inside of the mansion was exactly as he had imagined. Marble floors so shiny you could see yourself in them, a chandelier above the entrance hall that looked like it cost more than his entire apartment building, paintings in golden frames on every wall, a staircase with a deep red carpet running down the center. But Helen was right about one thing. It was cold in here. Not the kind of cold that comes from air conditioning, a different kind. The kind that comes from a house where people are too afraid to talk above a whisper. They climbed the staircase in silence. At the top, a long hallway stretched before them, and at the very end of it was a closed door. Helen knocked. She'll see you, she said. She gave Jacob one last look, part warning, part prayer, and then quickly walked back toward the stairs. Jacob was alone. He pushed the door open and stepped inside. The room was enormous. An entire wall of glass windows looked out over the city. The morning light came in clean and gold, falling across a king-sized bed, rows of bookshelves packed with thick business books, and expensive furniture that looked like it had never been sat in comfortably. And there, in the center of the room, sat Abigail Adams. She had her back to him, her wheelchair facing the window. Her hair was silver black, pulled tightly back from her face. She wore a silk robe over her shoulders, but it hung loose on her thin frame. Outside the window, the city was just waking up. Tiny cars and tiny people moving far below like ants. Close the door, she said without turning around. Jacob closed it gently. For a long moment she said nothing. Then, slowly she turned her wheelchair to face him. Jacob saw a woman with sharp eyes that seemed to look right through him. Her face was thin and pale. Her mouth was set in a hard line. But what struck him most was the sadness hidden deep in those eyes, a sadness she was trying very hard to cover with anger. "So," Abigail said, her voice dripping with sarcasm, "you're the brave soul who thinks he can take care of me?" "Yes, ma'am," Jacob said simply. She looked him up and down like she was inspecting a broken piece of furniture. "What's your name?" "Jacob Miller, ma'am." "And what makes you think you're qualified for this job, Jacob Miller?" "I see no medical uniform. No nursing badge. You look like you just walked off a construction site." "I'm a delivery driver, ma'am," Jacob said honestly. "I deliver food and packages around the city." Abigail's eyebrows shot up. Then she laughed, but it wasn't a happy laugh. It was harsh and mocking. "A delivery driver? Helen sent me a delivery driver?" She shook her head. "This is a new low, even for the desperate parade of fools who've walked through that door." Jacob didn't flinch. He stood still and looked directly at her. "I may not be a trained nurse," he said calmly, "but I've been taking care of my mother for 4 years. She has diabetes. I help her with her medicine, her meals, her insulin shots. I make sure she's comfortable. I'm patient, I'm responsible, and I don't give up easily." Abigail studied